Also,
what have you.
it was morning in America. It wasn't "this country really stinks" and I'll make it great again. It was morning in America and the great American dream. And, by the way, this is a guy, and I have this quote in my latest book, Thank the Liberals for Saving America, where your father says, I believe in a, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, a place where there are no walls and where people are welcome. He would not have been giving the Trump message of, I'm going to deport everybody.
No, he wouldn't have done that. And, I asked Jake Tapper, I said, he said, what question would you ask of those at your father's library on Wednesday? I said, I'd ask them, do you think Ronald Reagan would take the Dreamers and actually ship them out of the United States of America? Do you think the Ronald Reagan you all talk about, do you really think that man would pick the Dreamers up and say, leave the United States? And Ronald Reagan wouldn't do that. That wasn't Ronald Reagan's heart. Not at all.
Right.
And Ronald Reagan wasn't mean-spirited in anything. And what Ronald Reagan would do is he would call everybody together. He'd say, bring out the immigration bill. Let's look at the areas we agree on. Okay, give me that piece of legislation. I'll sign it. The things we disagree with, we'll get together the next time and we'll talk about those things. You've got to work with the other side. I don't care if you agree or disagree with the other side. My father and Tip O'Neill didn't like each other politically at all.
Right.
But they found a way to get things
as Clinton
done.
did with Newt Gingrich, by the way.
Absolutely.
By the way, here's that great quote. He said, I've spoken, this was his farewell speech. I love this quote. I've spoken of the shining city all my political life. He said, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks, stronger than oceans, windswept, God blessed, teeming with people of all kinds, living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hum with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be a city with walls, the walls had doors, and the doors are open to anyone with the will and heart to get here. That's how I saw it and see it still.
Well, I mean,
that's exactly not what the Republican message is right now.
Exactly how he, in fact, saw it. And, there's 11 million illegals here now at this point. But if the economy was growing at 4% or 5%, we wouldn't be really talking about that. It's like we're always looking for an enemy, and the enemy was communism.
Right.
The enemy was the Soviet Union. The enemy was the Berlin Wall. Well, we knocked down the Berlin Wall, and we put communism basically on the ash heap of history. Now we have to look for a new enemy, and the new enemy has become the illegals that are in here. I don't agree with the illegals in here. I think something needs to be done. But you're not going to round up 11 million people and throw them out of the United States.
So
of America.
Who do you like for president?
Door to come in.
Who do you like?
Well, I mean, I like, seriously, any of the sitting or former sitting governors. I know Rick Perry just dropped out today. Perry's it's interesting. Rick Perry did in Texas everything that Trump says he wants to do in America, but couldn't gain ground to move out of the state of Texas and get close to D.C. But I think the sitting governors, former and sitting governors that we have, I mean, I look at what John Kasich, who I've known for years, has done in Ohio. But yet, people on my side of the equation, he's a rhino because he brought Medicare in on Obamacare into Cleveland, or into Ohio, so we need to get rid of him. Or Jeb Bush believes in Common Core, so we need to get rid of Jeb Bush.
He also said that immigration is an act of love to bring people here from overseas. But
again, we find more reasons to throw people under the bus or off the bus than find ways to bring them in. We don't look at all the good that they've done in their respective states. And I've talked a bit to you about this before, and I talk about when I speak to Republicans. If Ronald Reagan were to run today, and you only knew him as governor of the state of California, would he be referred to as a rhino? I mean, he raised taxes, signed an abortion bill, no-fault divorce, and my God, he was a union leader.
And allowed how many undocumented immigrants to stay here? Right.
Yeah, but as president, he signed the amnesty bill. But before that,
right.
And that's what we're doing anymore. We're trying to find ways not to support people than ways to support people. Ronald Reagan had the 80-20 rule. Now it's 100%, on my side, or I'm not with you at all. We have to find ways to embrace people and to be inclusive. This party, the Ronald Reagan Republican Party, was more inclusive when he was the head of it than, in fact, it is today. Today it seems to be more of an angry party. I'm sorry, but when Ann Coulter's your spokesman, on immigration. The fact is, if you can't go across this country and find a Hispanic that doesn't love Ronald Reagan, you can also not go across this country and find a Hispanic that likes the Republican Party.
Right. Now,
because the only voice they hear is "Get the hell out of my country."
Now, when you mentioned former governors, there's one named Mike Huckabee, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a resounding response.
Well, he's running for pastor in chief.
That's what I've said. Yeah.
Yeah, what you and I talked about, which is absolutely true. I mean, the fiasco down in Kentucky this week with him having a Huckabee moment and a Huckabee campaign with this woman who, by the way, is sworn to uphold the laws of the Constitution of the United States.
What would Ronald Reagan say?
God.
What would your dad say about Kim Davis?
My dad, as I said in an op-ed piece this week, I said my dad would have followed the law, not Mike Huckabee.
He wouldn't have held a rally there to lead her out of prison.
No, you know something? Yeah, you may agree. You and I disagree on gay marriage.
Right.
All right? But guess what? We can still talk to each other. We disagree on gay marriage, but the reality is that's the law. The Supreme Court made the ruling. I may not agree with the ruling,
right,
but that is the ruling. I can't pick and choose which ones I like.
Do you
and
know
I
that
don't
Mike
like.
Huckabee said yesterday that Dred Scott is still the law of the land?
Yeah, I think he said that, and he also said the Constitution was divinely inspired.
Right.
I thought that was the Bible.
Yeah, right. But okay, but to say that Dred Scott, which says blacks aren't full human beings, is the law of the what? I don't get it. I don't get it because he's not a dumb guy.
You sit there and sometimes you just shake your head. And what happens in the political realm? He is reaching out to a certain segment within the conservative movement, Christian movement, that all buys into that.
Right.
And he's hoping they show up in Iowa.
Can Donald Trump get the nomination?
Well, I mean, anybody get the nomination, but I'm concerned if he gets the nomination, who's going to come along? Who's going to come along with him? Who's going to support him if he goes forward much further?
Well, if he's getting 32% now in the Republican,
I know. And that's scary. I mean, that is scary to me. Somebody who can malign and say the things he says about other Republicans on that stage, and you have people out there who, in fact, support that. My father, at the end of the day, if this keeps going forward, my father may actually say, the party left me. I didn't leave the party.
Where would he go? He'd go back to being a Democrat.
He may just go to bed.
He might have to go back to the Democratic Party where he came from.
I don't know if he'd go back there either. You got your own problems with our buddy out there, old Sanders.
Hey, Michael, I'm always.
Now, you're more in line with Sanders than you are with Hillary.
I've said that many times, but what I've also said,
I'm just proving to people how much I know you.
But we didn't even talk about this, did we, when we spoke before? But I really like Bernie, but I would still, support Hillary if she were the nominee. Do you think Joe Biden's going to get in?
No. If I was Joe Biden, I have a friend of mine who's Joe Biden and him are best friends, and I was saying to him the other day, I said, if I'm Joe Biden, this country right now needs an elder statesman.
And that's Joe Biden.
And that is Joe Biden. I thought last night on Steve
Colbert, wasn't he great?
I thought he was absolutely brilliant last night on Colbert's show. You really felt for him. And you saw that. You saw that elder statesman side of him, coming out. That's where I like to see him. I told my friend, I said, the only reason I would run if I was Joe Biden, if somebody could say to me 100%, I was going to win.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell me that, I stay out. I become the elder statesman of this party, and we move forward, because he would be a wonderful elder statesman for your side. Your side of the building needs one. As our side needs one, your side needs one.
Who's your elder statesman?
We don't have one. We don't have a leader. I mean, the liberals, you all are led by ideology, and I'm not disagreeing with it. You're led by ideology. You're liberal. But conservatives, nobody can define a conservative. I mean, you have...
Yeah, you can. Smaller government. Keep taxes as low as possible.
Then you got your pro-life movement.
Right.
Then you have your economic movement. Then you have your military movement. You have all these different factions within the conservative movement, and they need to find a way to come together. Ronald Reagan, when I was speaking at Liberty University last year, they asked me a question about my father and Jerry Falwell. I said, what you need to understand is Ronald Reagan had such an inclusive message that he didn't reach out to Jerry Falwell and the moral majority. They reached out to Ronald Reagan. And today, we're doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can't do that and have a winning attitude. You've got to have a message that's going to bring people to you. You can't just keep on changing it every week, trying to attract different groups out there, because you get yourself in trouble. Ask Mitt Romney with the 43% comment.
Yeah, yeah. Mike.